Hey, thanks for joining me today for this episode of Curves Welcome, a podcast about facing and embracing the curves of life. If this is your first time tuning in, this is Susie Carr. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'd like to welcome a special guest to the podcast today, Finn Burnett. She is here to chat with us about how to live life on your own terms. Finn, it is so great to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. I love you anyway, and I haven't spoken to you in so long. So I was very excited to get to come have a conversation with you.
For everybody listening, I had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for the Golden Crown Literary Society for the past few years with Finn, where Finn, you served as a director of education, and you continue to support the GCLS Writing Academy as well. You've written a whole bunch of amazing stories, including one of my absolute favorites, Eating Life, which I personally think should be made into a movie because it's really such a great story about life, and it's just honest, it's authentic, and I related to it. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and where you are in your current journey in life?
Absolutely. So I am a teacher and I'm also a doctoral student. So I think that gives me a beautiful balance. I find myself able to relate more with my students because I'm in a really strenuous program. And I've had situations, especially during this pandemic and with, mental health issues, and we're all locked down and it gets really stressful. And I've had situations where I've reached out to professors and said, I am doing my best and I absolutely cannot get this in on this date, and they've given me so much grace, and so I've turned around and given that to my students. So being a teacher and a student is wonderful. I don't think, even if I had a best-selling book today, I don't think I would ever give up being a teacher because I just love it so much. And I've been doing a lot of workshops lately. I just did one for the Her Story conference on plotting and structure, and that was amazing. There was about 40 people there, and that was fantastic. And I've been writing, although I've taken 3 years off since my last novel, before without publishing anything. I had just reached a point where it was time for me to take a break from publishing and focus more on my craft. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Finn, I can totally relate to you on so many levels right now. So
Yeah.
many levels. So the strenuous program, first of all, I'm not a doctoral student, but I am a graduate student studying for my master's. And it is a very strenuous process. And when you couple that with everyday life,
Yeah.
maintaining a household, relationships, you have a cat, all of those things, I think just really add to the pressure of being able to show up and want to do your best. And sometimes feeling like, oh gosh, am I really going to make it through this? Is it really going to happen? And so I totally get what you mean by that. And the whole idea around the mental health right now with the pandemic and the lockdowns, it is a real struggle for so many people. And I think I'm thinking about myself in this, is that when the pandemic hit and everybody was on lockdown, one of the things that I heard throughout is, oh, what can I do with my time right now? I should really be doing a lot of things right now in order to, I don't know, benefit myself and grow and come out of this pandemic a different, changed person who has all of these new skill sets. And so I personally, like in the first month or two, started taking piano lessons, voice lessons, decided to sign up for graduate school. Like I just overwhelmed myself thinking I had to do all this because I'm on
Yeah.
lockdown. Anyway, I don't know if you had that sort of same experience when this whole thing hit.
Of course, like I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be the perfect time for me to learn French." Like, just because I'm in lockdown doesn't mean I'm not still teaching 5 classes, taking 3 classes, teaching the writing academy, trying to do my own work. I mean, but all of that's done, I'm just like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna try to learn French." That did not last very long, let me tell you. I Duolingoed every day for about 2 months, but I could not hold a conversation in French right now.
It's so funny because I purchased a used piano like right when the pandemic hit so that I could take these lessons, right? And then as I started taking the lessons, I was picking it up a little bit. And then I thought, I don't really have time for this. So since then, I've gotten rid of the used piano and donated it to somebody else.
Right.
It's really funny. But it's also interesting to me what you said about taking time off from writing for 3 years. I think it's really important for people to be able to step back sometimes from their craft or from things that they have always thought they should be doing in life because they've always been doing it or they've worked so hard to be where they are in that craft that I've taken some time off too. I haven't written a book in over a year now because I just needed that time to step away and get a fresh perspective. How do you feel about that as a writer, taking that time off? Does it scare you? Does it challenge you? Does it make you feel empowered? How are you feeling about that?
In the first year, I felt frustrated about it all the time. And I remember talking to, Corellia Waters, who is an amazing professor and an amazing
Yes.
writer, and also just a really wise person. And I had was talking to her at one point, and I said, I'm really was kind of shaming myself that I haven't published anything, and I don't even have a book on the, I'd done short stories here and there, but I don't have a book on my brain right now, and certainly not a lesfic. And I just, I'm not even really a writer right now. And she said, you know, forcing words out every day is not what makes you a writer. And I can't remember exactly how she said, but she said sometimes the ideas just need to go into the ground to germinate, and you just have to give yourself that time to let them learn to sprout. And she was right. And after I took that advice to heart, which was really like just talking to her just made me feel so much better. And I stopped shaming myself about not trying to publish and not trying to be a lesbian writer. And I just started kind of focusing on the muse and what came out when I wanted to come out. And instead of forcing myself to sit down every day, I would just write when I felt like writing. And sometimes it was flash fiction, sometimes it was short stories, sometimes it was on a novel, which I did end up completing 3 novels in the last 3 years. I just haven't done anything to publish them. um, so yeah, I just kind of gave myself that grace that we were talking about earlier to not force myself into something.
I really like that. I think that's really smart advice. Don't force yourself. And I love that advice about putting the seeds in the ground and letting them germinate.
Yeah,
All too often, I think that we just rush through life forgetting to do that. That sometimes there's a season for everything, and sometimes you need to just be in that season where you let things germinate and kind of take on a life of their own and see what happens and see what blooms as a result of that.
yeah.
Now, the topic today is living life on your own terms. Can you give us an example of a time in your life when you decided that you needed to live life on your own terms? Like, what actions did you take to do that?
I always say that the very first time in my life that I can say for certain that this is a defining moment that changed my life was when I quit smoking. And I had been smoking for 22 years. I was at almost 2 packs a day at the time that I quit. And I woke up and I was drinking really heavily. I was in a very toxic relationship. Like everything in my life I was a very different person. Like if you met me who I was back then, you wouldn't believe that that's the same person. um, and I just woke up one morning and I couldn't breathe. And I said to my then partner, "Oh, I can't breathe. I think I'm having a heart attack." And she said, "No, it's just because you smoked too much last night while we were drinking. You'll be fine after you have some coffee." And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And I got up and I had some coffee. And after I had some coffee, my lungs started clearing. And I thought, okay, well, I'm okay. And I went to reach for my pack of cigarettes. And I just had this epiphany moment of, why am I doing something that makes me feel like I'm dying? And I quit that moment and never had another cigarette. And it was miserable. It was so hard. I cried every day. I had nightmares every night. I had heart palpitations every day. I had hot flashes. I felt like I was dying for, I want to say, like a month, as my body just tried to get rid of this chemical that had become so ingrained in me. And when I finally got through it, I realized, well, if I can quit something that horrible and live like who I want to be, which is someone that's healthy and happy, then I don't need to stay in a toxic relationship. And I don't need to keep drinking all the time, even though that's what like people expect of me. And I can go back to school. I went back to school shortly after. Like everything in my life stemmed from me deciding that I'm taking this moment to live the Finn that I want to be, and not the Finn that I am right now. Does that stay on topic? I mean,
Wow, yeah, that is amazing. First of all, I'm so happy that you were able to do that because there's so many people who struggle with addictions of all different kinds. And I have an addiction to certain foods and things like that. I haven't I could be a binge eater if I really wanted to, if I did not control myself, and I have in parts of my life. And it's I turn to food when I want comfort. So that's a form of addiction. Um, where there are different levels and different addictions out there. The fact that you just did it, you made a decision because you knew that it was right for your body and for your life. And the fact that that action that you took, that decision that you made, became stepping stones to the rest of your life. I mean, if we use the analogy of the whole germination, blooming garden, thinking about steps in a garden, and as you walk through and you progress in that garden, what are you seeing now? You're seeing a whole new life. That
Yeah.
must be an amazing feeling, empowering feeling to be able to do that. In terms of how you did that, like what for people out there who are struggling with addictions and they really want to grasp it, they really want to get a handle on it, they really want to be able to do what you did and take that action, what can somebody do? Like, what's one thing you think that helped you wrap your brain around the fact that I'm stronger than this addiction at that moment? Because I'm sure you had those moments early on. Like, hmm,
I think I would tell people like the biggest thing you can do is find a way to not shame yourself for being addicted right now. The my biggest pet peeve are people who are former smokers or former drinkers or former drug addicts who are like, "Oh, I can't believe people are addicted to that. I got off of it." And it's like, "No, if you went through this, wouldn't you be more compassionate for people who are physically addicted? Like it's not your fault that you're addicted to something. It's not that you have a weakness or that you did something wrong and that's why you're addicted to something." And for as much as we talk about mental health and how people deserve compassion around mental health issues, that doesn't extend a lot of times to addiction. And so I would say that like the first thing to do is just kind of internalize that it's not your fault that you're addicted, that it doesn't mean you're a bad person. And what shame doesn't work, shame doesn't work to stop you from doing something. And if I could just somehow make people like stop feeling that shame, I think that we could all get a lot better if we when once we get over the shame of the addiction.
ooh, that is really, I've never heard it stated that way. And that resonates so deeply because I don't care who you are, what walk of life you're from, there is a shameful feeling to not being where everybody else seems to be in life,
Yes.
right? And when you stop, step back, and realize that everybody goes through struggles. You are not the only person who has struggled in life. Every single person on the planet has a struggle point, a pain point that they've had to deal with. And I think if we can look at it that way, through that lens, we realize we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to get it right all the time. And that grace that you offer yourself is so healing. It sounds like it's that's a really good way to look at it.
It's such a common denominator. Like years ago, I gave a workshop on coming through your shame. It was, I want to say there was like 70 women there. It was at a women's music festival. And we went through this whole workshop. At the beginning of the workshop, I said, how many people here think that you're probably the worst person in this group and your shame is, and everyone raised their hand. And then at the very end of it, I said, so, how many of you right now are feeling so good and compassionate about your neighbor's shame right now? And everyone raised their hand. I said, and how many of you still think that if we knew the truth about you, we'd still think that you were the freak of the group? And like everyone raised their hand. And I thought, like, that's so deeply ingrained in us that our inner shame or our inner demons are so much worse than everyone else. And yet, if everyone feels like that, then how can that be true?
Ooh. It makes me think about forgiveness, right? Grace and forgiveness to me are very similar emotions that we talk about. And when we can't forgive ourselves for something, whatever that might be, it's really hard to move forward in life. It's really
Yeah.
hard. You keep looking back because that's what you do, and you just keep reliving things in your mind. Addiction, all of that stuff plays into that. It's really hard to move forward when you're always thinking behind yourself. And so if we could learn to forgive ourselves for our whatever our faults, if you want to even call them that. I wouldn't even call them that. Are you are human, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. The way we are as human beings. We're human
Right.
beings, right? None of us are perfect. So if we can just get past that, then we can look forward and we can say, okay, I've dealt with that. I understand I have this addiction. Let me look over here and see what else is going on in life, because I'm not worried about this now. I'm realizing it's there. It's gonna be there in my past always. So that's okay. But what's in my future? What
Yeah.
can I look for? And I feel like that would be a stepping stone to the future, like it was with you.
Yeah.
Now, Finn, what has been one of your biggest aha moments that you experienced from living life on your own terms?
I very recently, so this is pretty personal to me. I recently changed my name to a more masculine name, and I'm definitely kind of wrestling with my own gender feelings right now. I know I still might have my pronouns as she and they, but that's because I feel I'm kind of in a transition area. But I was talking to my wife, and I've been going by Finn or Finian with her for years now, but not really telling anyone else except for a very couple few close people. And I just was telling her, I just feel like I don't know how to make the next step. And she said, just do it. Just if that's how you want to be, then just do that. And the people that don't understand will understand, and the ones that won't probably aren't the kind of people that you want to hang around with anyway. And I thought, like so my mom said to me all the time in middle school and preschool or elementary school, and you kind of everyone says that, but you don't really absorb it, I think. And here I am at 50 years old, and I just said, okay, you know what, fine. And then just all in one swoop changed all my social media, my web pages, everything, and just told everyone this is who I am now. And almost everyone was just like, okay, cool. And it was such a revelation. Like I'd been holding this anxiety over how am I going to tell people I'm too old? People are going to be like, she's too old to be having gender issues, and that's for kids. And like I just had all this internalized, I guess, transphobia of my own. And then all of a sudden it was like so not a thing to so many people. It just,
It goes in line with what you said earlier, that sometimes we think more of what a problem is, and other people even they don't even realize it. They don't even realize we have the struggles that we have, and they wouldn't even care if we did, right?
I know.
Like it wouldn't mean it. It wouldn't. They would be like, so what? Okay, so you like to binge eat once in a while? Big deal, you know. Let's move on. And so I'm really proud of you, because when you first did that, when I first saw that social post, my reaction was, yeah, like, oh, I was so proud and so happy for you, because I knew that that probably took a lot of strength and a lot of courage to do that, because you're basically coming out to the world as a just somebody not different to you, because you've always been Finn, but you were concerned about how people would perceive you coming out as Finn. So it's very similar to coming out stories, right?
Yeah.
I remember that feeling when my real name is Denise. My middle name is Susie.
Okay.
Okay. And so I remember when I first started publishing all my books, it was under Susie, my middle name, because I didn't tell anybody in my life that I was Susie Carr, except for very close people in my life.
Right.
You know, my spouse knew, of course, and best friends, a very close circle of people. But I kept it from my professional life, from my family. I mean, I'm talking all the way from my parents, my siblings, everybody. And then one day, I just my spouse said to me, why? Like, if you are Susie, why don't you just say you're Susie? Like, I don't understand. So he gave me the courage to do that. So I remember sitting my parents down and I said, Mom and Dad, and I came out to them. Like, I'm a bisexual woman and I write romance books about women loving women, and my name is Susie Carr. And then my parents were like, great. Wow, that's awesome. And then they friended me on Facebook, and it's been history ever since. And then all my
Yeah.
aunts, uncles, cousins, slowly but surely, everybody's like, oh, yeah, it's Susie. But
Yeah.
in my mind, I thought it was this big, huge monumental thing that nobody would get and everybody would wonder, and nobody really did.
No. And then some people do, but then it's like you think, yeah, well, okay, then that person wasn't really that great.
Yeah,
I remember I
exactly.
messaged Nikki Little and I said, like I was testing the waters, and I just love Nikki. Like she's just such an amazing person. She's so funny and she's so brilliant, but then she just takes like drops these wisdom bombs. And I messaged her and I did the whole like I think I want to maybe change my name to Finian. And she's like, okay, just let me know when you want to start me to start calling you that. Which was like, well, that was a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be. You know?
And tell me, how does it feel now that you have introduced the world, everybody in your circle, to you, Finian?
It feels so wonderful, and it's really just it just feels right, and it just feels as if I'm just being who I want to be, and that's not to say that there's not struggles, but it feels really open, and I see myself as being someone who's generally very open about a lot of things anyway. I talk openly about my depression on social media and in blogs, and it's good to kind of also show. I think there's probably a lot of older people who are wrestling with ideas of gender identity, and we don't see that, when you see people who are either non-binary or transmasculine, and they're generally, thin, androgynous, and what you see in media.
Yeah.
And so coming at it from an older fat person, female body, and saying, this can also happen to you, or this can also be something that you can deal with. I think that that's good for people.
And I also think that the age thing, there's wisdom. There's a comfort level that comes with aging where we learn to, I feel like, at least myself, I turned 51 this past year, and I feel like I'm more accepting of myself as a 51-year-old than I ever was when I was 45 or 35 or 25. I'm starting to let my hair grow in gray. And you know what? I'm like, I actually really like it. And I'm really excited about, I can't wait to see it all gray one day. And I'm
Yeah.
okay with it now because I earned the gray hairs, I earned the wrinkles. And I feel like when you get to a certain, I don't know, maybe it's this 50, 51, who knows? We're both in the same category there, that it's time, you realize life is so short. You just want to live your life fully of with who you are. And you accept yourself more. And it doesn't matter what other people think, like it did when I was 30, when I was 20. I don't care about what people think anymore.
Yeah, you
I
become
really
less
don't.
fraught.
Yeah.
Life is more about being happy with yourself and your immediate loved ones than about what the grand wide world thinks about you.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. What would you say, Finn, to somebody who is struggling to find their way out of being stuck in some of the choices maybe they've made, and they want to move past that, but they don't know how. They don't even know what first step to take.
It's hard because it can be different depending on what you're struggling with. I'm a big fan of lists. I know when I was in like the stuck in the rut with the smoking and the drinking and the abusive relationship and all of that, I actually made myself a list of these are things big and small that I need to do to start living a different life. And I find that I like to have a combination of really tiny things and really huge things on my list of like what I need to do, so that when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can just do something and cross it off the list, and then something is done. But I would say just take a step, any step. If what you want to do is write a novel, you want to write your first novel, then as long as you read a book or write something or write a short story or make an outline or watch a class on outlining, as long as you're doing anything like that, you're working towards your dream. So if your goal is to quit smoking and what you do today is watch videos on how to successfully quit smoking, you've done something toward living that dream.
Yeah, that's powerful because it really is all about action steps. And in order to get from point A to point B, you have to take a step. And that step doesn't have to be monumental. It doesn't have to be a giant stride. It doesn't have to mean you have to solve everything in that one step, right? It
Yeah.
means you can take one small little action. And it could be, like you said, just watching a video or reading one sentence that puts you in the right state of mind.
Yeah.
Really, and that's something that I think everybody can wrap their brain around and conceivably do without much effort. So it's really just that those small little chunked steps that
Yeah.
actually one day bring you to a larger, you look back on it and you say, wow, I came from point A to point B and look how far that is. And I did it by taking these little small breadcrumbs, little small little steps every day
Yeah.
towards it. And then finally you get to the point and you're like, you look back and you're like, wow. And then you have something to be proud of.
Right. Like I always, I used to always tell my students, well, if you sit down and write 1,000 words a day, you'll have a novel in several months. But, sometimes you can't do 1,000 words a day. But if you sit down and write one sentence every day, you are going to have a novel at some point, even if
Right.
it's just one little sentence. So why not just do something, like one thing?
Exactly. It might take you 5 years when you're writing one sentence a day, but who cares? It's better than 5 years. You land on that 5 year mark and then you look back and you're like, damn, I wish I would have written something. Right. You
Exactly.
actually, it's actually a really good idea, Finn, because I have been struggling with the whole, I really want to write something, but I'm really busy because of grad school. It's really hard for me to sit down and commit to writing an actual novel. But what if I write a paragraph a day? I mean, how long is a paragraph going to take me? 5, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
I surely have 5 or 10 minutes. I could potentially stop watching the TikTok videos of dogs on Instagram when I drink my coffee in the morning. I
Right.
could write a paragraph instead.
You could write, there's this web page called 50 Word Stories. And I recently had one published on their website because if you think 50 words, man, you could write that in 15 minutes and polish it up in another 15 minutes, half an hour, you've got something published, right?
I love it. I did see on your social media that the 50 word thing. That is
Yeah.
so awesome. What is the website?
I think it's just 50wordstories.com. But if you Google 50 word stories, then I think it's the only one that comes up.
Okay, I'm definitely going to do that because I think that's a great idea. Now, in terms of what does someone risk in your mind, in your opinion, what does somebody risk when they choose to live life on somebody else's terms?
I mean, I think you risk so much, right? You risk your own mental health, you risk your self-esteem, you risk not ever being fully happy. My wife and I talk about this a lot because we've both had past experiences where we did so much compromising to try to make someone else happy and didn't really pay attention to our own happiness. And I know you think that people tell you that relationships are supposed to be work, and this goes for all relationships, marriages, friendships, employer employee relationships. It's not actually supposed to be that much work. If you're in a relationship and only one person is churning and churning and churning trying to make it happy, it's not actually healthy and it's not actually happy. So whatever kind of relationship, if you're doing something always that your boss tells you to do and you're being disrespected and taken advantage of, or if you're in a marriage and your spouse doesn't ever meet you halfway and you feel like you're constantly churning just to get them to be approving of you, or you have a friend that's constantly making snide comments about your outfits, or like that's the risk you have, is that you're giving everything to other people and then you're not doing anything for yourself. I think that can be soul sucking.
Soul sucking. That is a word. That is a good word to describe that. It reminds me, what you just said reminds me of something that I learned, that work doesn't actually equate to action. In other words, when you're in a relationship, to keep a relationship thriving and exciting, people say it takes work. I say it takes action. So, action does not mean hard work. It doesn't have
Right.
to mean hard work. It can mean you take action every day to maybe say something that compliments your partner or builds them up somehow or adds some laughter into the life, something that just makes them feel special. If you do that every day, you keep your finger on the pulse of that, that's not work. That's just taking action. And that is necessary for a relationship to thrive, because everybody, when you're in a relationship, no matter what that relationship is, could be mother, daughter, best friends. If you stop paying attention, it kind of dies, just like a plant. Kind of like my bamboo plant in my living room right now. I sort of forgot about it and it's sort of dying. So now I'm talking to it, playing music for it,
Right.
giving it nutrients, and she's coming back to life. But, when you neglect something, obviously that happens. But when you pay attention to it, they
Yeah.
thrive usually.
It's appreciation in any relationship. If you're doing something for someone and they don't appreciate it, then why do you want to keep doing it?
Exactly. Exactly. Finn, is there anything else that you'd like to share with people before we close out today that I maybe did not ask you?
I mean, that's an open, like, that could be anything,
Go
right?
ahead, open it up. The floor is
Well,
yours.
I would say, as if we're keeping it in line with the theme, one thing I'm doing to live life on my own terms right now is I'm taking a lot of workshops, writing workshops. I decided a few years ago that I thought my writing was really good and in some cases great. Like you said, Eating Life is your favorite book. That's definitely my favorite of my
Absolutely.
books. Karen Richard would not agree because she was in love with my first book, but Eating Life is definitely the most authentic book to me. And I decided that if I couldn't consistently do that, I didn't want to write anything that wasn't consistently great. And so I've spent a lot of time just really working on my craft, and I've kind of been coming out with some really stunning short stories lately that I consider stunning, which is amazing. And so I keep working at it, and I'm signed up for another workshop in February, a 5-week workshop on just honing your craft. And so that doesn't have to be about writing. It could be about anything. Like I would just say, just keep trying, keep working at it, and be in a place where what you're doing, you're proud of. So that's, I think, what's really important to me right now is that I'm producing writing right now that I'm proud of. And regardless of if other people see it or love it or know it or buy it, I'm really happy with what's coming out of my brain right now. And so that's a really great thing.
Oh, I'm really happy for you. That's a great place to be in life. And when you are happy, you can project that happiness onto others and make other people happy. So it becomes
Yeah.
this whole cyclical thing that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is.
Finn, how can people connect with you if, say, they want to read your writing or they want to connect with you on social media to keep up with your writing and your journey?
Absolutely. I have a really easy website. It's finnburnett.com. So that's FINN Burnett.com. I'm on Twitter at Finny and Burnett, all one word, and I'm on Facebook, Finny and Burnett. I'm really easy to find. So I think if you come to Facebook and type in Finny and Burnett or Twitter, and you can sign up for my mailing list. I'm on my monthly mailing list, which comes out maybe like every 3 months, really, or every 4 months. So I will 100% not spam you if you sign up for my mailing list because I'm really bad at keeping it up to date. So yeah, I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm really open to connecting with people.
Excellent. I will put that link to your website in the show notes, and then from there people can find you if they so desire, which they
Perfect.
should, because you're an amazing person. It has
Well, I think
been
you're an amazing person.
thanks. Finn, it's been so great chatting with you today. Thank you so much for coming on to my podcast, Curves Welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've had such a wonderful time.
Hey, friends, thanks for spending time with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. If there is something you'd enjoy exploring in a future podcast, please reach out to me via my website at curveswelcome.com and I'll work it in. While you're there, grab a free story too. It's my way of thanking you for your support of my podcast and romance novels. Also, be sure to follow the Curves Welcome podcast channel to keep up on the latest episodes. So, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, go out there and continue to learn, grow, and embrace life's curves.